I was home alone for the week as my family had gone on vacation while I had to stay and work. It was around 2 a.m. and I'd stayed up to watch a scary movie in the dark in my basement. I was intent on really scaring myself and seeing how far into terror I could really go, while still knowing I was safe in my own home. It was then that I heard pounding footsteps on the first floor. This was a common annoying occurrence when my family was home. Every time they passed through the front hallway, past the basement door, I heard their footsteps. This time, fear immediately shot through me at the sound. My reflex was to turn the television off immediately. The basement door was up a flight of steps and around a corner, so whoever it was would not have seen any light. I heard the basement door handle click and turn as I sat in absolute darkness. I moved slowly so as to be absolutely silent, and crawled behind our large television. As I passed it inch by inch, I noted with panic that its black screen still dimly glowed. I heard footsteps coming down the carpeted but creaky stairs. I froze in my hiding place, listening. For many long minutes I heard nothing. Had the intruder seen the television's afterglow, or had it faded in time? Was he standing in the pitch dark listening for me? I seemed to lie there in total silence for an interminably long time. My panic began to fade, and I began to think more clearly. Had I really heard an intruder? Could someone possibly be standing there in silence for so long without making any noise? The basement was so exceedingly quiet that the silence itself began to hurt my ears. Could the unknown person really avoid any noise from shuffling or breathing or anything else? If there was an intruder, he was still in the basement. Because the creaky stairs were incredibly loud, the door handle clicked, and he wouldn't know to mask his footsteps on the first floor so that they couldn't be heard down here. I began counting in my head, trying to pass the time. As drool fell from my mouth onto the carpet, I didn't dare risk the sound of swallowing. I reached 60 seconds once, twice, 30 times, 60 times. By now my fear had faded and I was more confused than anything. I estimated I'd been crouched in the absolute black for almost 2 hours and had still heard nothing. If there was an intruder, none of this made sense. Finally, I decided I'd have to make a move. If I did nothing, eventually the sun would come up and shine in through the small basement windows. And worse, I began to smell something horrible and cloying. Slowly, ever so slowly, I began inching my way towards the stairs by way of the walls. If someone was standing there in the dark, I should be able to go around them and then make a break up the stairs. Meanwhile, the horrible odor grew stronger. Had something died down here in the night? No living person would smell like that. Terrible images of some sort of corpse monster listening for me in the dark erupted in my thoughts, and I moved as fast as I could without making a sound. Just as I finally approached the stairs, there was an enormous clatter, as of something falling or collapsing on the floor. It was at that moment I leapt forward and crashed up the stairs, running out through the open basement door and my wide-open front door. Now certain that someone was in the house, I called the police from my cell phone and watched my house from afar. The police came, checked inside the house, and then grimly came back out to question me. They'd found a body in the house, my elderly neighbor, who seemed to have died of a heart attack. Their belief was that I must have left the front door unlocked, and he must have wandered in my house while dying, looking for help. At first, I felt horrible, thinking that I had sat there in the dark, while the old man literally died a few feet away. Then it occurred to me, what the hell was that loud noise of things falling? That last prompted me to bolt up the stairs and out of the house. I asked the police and they confirmed. The back door of my house had been left open as well, near a single bare footprint in the mud. Somehow, for some reason I'll never know, there was someone else in that basement with us, silent, waiting, and listening in the dark over the fresh corpse of an old man. The impossible window. My grandmother's house was a long, narrow structure typical of an ancient Pittsburgh suburb. It was one room wide throughout, and set among a row of other such houses on a very steep hill. It was robust, but my immigrant grandparents made a home of it. My father grew up there, and my brother and I were taken to visit 3 or 4 times a year. I spent the nights of many family gatherings in a room that felt like a cave, far at the back of the second floor. It was a perfect hideout once the adults let me escape from dinner. There were old books there, of the kind that can't be found anymore. I read them by the orange glow that filtered in through the blinds of the sole window at the back of the room. It was the muted and soft glow of a streetlight. I often fell asleep to the ethereal sound of passing cars in the night. As the years passed, I grew older, and books were replaced by video games that I brought from home. My brother joined me, and we took refuge in our cave to escape the younger children and boring adults. We would play in there for hours on a black and white television, once the pride and joy of my grandfather's possessions. Still, that window lent a soft glow to the room that let us turn off the main light and fool the adults into thinking we were asleep while we stayed up and gamed. We returned there about 2 years ago to pack the place up and handle the estate. My father was there, his eyes tired. He saw half a century of memories in every room. I can't imagine what he felt. He told us all about the adventures he and his 6 siblings had had growing up there. He took us to our room at the very back of the second floor, through a long, narrow hallway, and past all of the other rooms. It was his room that we always took refuge in. He had always secretly enjoyed the fact that my brother and I liked the room too. "You know, in all the years we've been coming here, I've never looked out that window," I told him. "Well, it's our last chance," he replied. "Take a look." My father walked over to that window and adjusted the blinds. They opened to reveal the Pittsburgh cityscape as it was just starting to glow in the early evening twilight, a beautiful view from high on our hill. "I grew up with this view," my father mused. "So many younger versions of me looked out this window." I joined him at the glass, eyeing the streetlight that had lit so many of my younger adventures. I remembered the view in detail, having peered out many times. My brother, who had somehow never managed to look out the window, immediately looked confused. "What are we looking at?" he asked, peering over our shoulders. We looked at him as if he was crazy for a moment. "This is the back of the house," he explained. "What is that light doing there?" My father and I looked back out at the same time. I traced the street below, noting parked cars, other houses, and a hill that ran down into distant cityscape. My father shook his head and ran out of the room. We followed him to the front of the house, where a sole window showed us the exact same scene, except it wasn't. The cars were different. The houses were the same, but different in small ways. The cityscape in the distance twinkled with slightly different patterns. I'd grown up with that back window, taken it for granted. My father started swearing and rushed to the back of the house again. We entered the room to find his face pressed against the glass. He peered about wildly, then seemed to fixate on something. "Dad!" he shouted. "Dad!" We ran up to look, and I saw a hand waving up at the window from the street below. As I leaned higher to try to see more, the hand dropped. I caught a glimpse of an old-fashioned hat as its owner approached the house. "Jesus Christ!" my dad shouted. "Dad, wait!" He pulled at the window, which seemed to have been painted shut long ago. We helped him, pushing at it, but it refused to budge. In desperation, he wrapped something around his arm and smashed the window. It shattered outward with a crash and the delicate sound of falling glass. And we peered out onto the backyard and driveway. Broken glass littered the ivy below. My mother was out there packing things in the van. She looked up at us, surprised. My father just shook his head, his eyes brimming. The room was dim. The comforting orange glow had vanished. Though we asked many times, he never spoke of that window again.